Ready to go, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Let's start with our today's session. A very pleasant afternoon to one and all present here. Education is not learning of facts, but training of mind to think. With this quote, in this mild afternoon, to refresh and create an impact onto our minds, Department of Electronics and Communication Engineering, Savita Engineering College, brings to you a webinar that depicts the current situation, the future of work and skills in the post-COVID world by Mr. Sunil David, Regional Director, IoT, India and ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, AT&T Global Network Services India Private Limited. A glimpse of our college and department. Savita Engineering College, established in the year 2001, an autonomous institution which follows the Finland-based education model, and we march towards less is more concept. Our college makes the students job ready by providing Industry 4.0 ready curriculum, which imparts the 21st century skills. Project-based learning integrated with subjects improves the student skill set and makes our learners to be the best, which is the motto of our college. The Department of ECE was established in the year 2001. Our vision is to develop the department into a state-of-art with Center of Excellence in Electronics and Communication Engineering education on par with global standards. The Department of ECE has well-experienced faculty of proven ability and diverse specialization. The faculty actively involves themselves in research in the fields of robotics, VLSI, MEMS, image processing, and embedded systems. Now, I would like to introduce our guest of the day. Mr. Sunil David has 26 years of experience in the IT and telecom industry and is currently the Regional Director IoT for AT&T India and is based in Chennai. He is responsible for building the IoT strategy for India and the ASEAN regions and working with various internal stakeholders to ensure successful execution. Working on building a robust partner ecosystem for AT&T in the entire IoT value chain and working on a number of marketing initiatives to help enhance the AT&T brand in the IoT space. In Feb 2020, Mr. Sunil was awarded the India's Fastest Growing Leaders 2019 to 20 Pride of the Nation at the 13th edition of the Asian Business and Social Forum at Bangkok to recognize Asia's greatest brands and leaders by an international media house, Asia One Magazine, part of UWG Holdings. Mr. Sunil was recognized by the World Marketing Congress in November 2017 as one of the 50 most influential digital marketing leaders across India. For 2 years in a row, September 2018 and September 2019, Mr. Sunil was honored with the Eminent Jury Member Award at the Asian Business and Social Forum 2018 and 19, India's Greatest Brand Leaders 2017 to 18 and 2018 to 19, in the Pride of India series organized by Asia One Magazine, part of UWG Holdings. Mr. Sunil has spoken at more than 50 industry forums in India and abroad, organized by leading industry bodies like COAI, CII, IAMAI, Cyber Media, NASCOM, and educational institutions including IIM Shillong, IIT Delhi, IIT Madras, SITM Pune in the past 2 years on topics related to IoT, AI, cybersecurity, digital transformation, etc. Mr. Sunil has also written articles related to smart cities, Industry 4.0, digital transformation, disruptive technologies, 5G, IoT security for leading B2B publications from ADI Media and CIO Review that has a wide circulation among the CIO community in India. We are very happy to have you with us today, sir. You may please take over the session now.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and I would like to thank the Savita College management and specifically Beulah ma'am for inviting me to speak on this very, very pertinent and important topic, the future of work and the skills in the post-COVID world, right? It's almost 3-4 months now since the pandemic has struck us, and these are unprecedented times. And these are times when the industry, government, society at large are grappling with in terms of how do we address to this current situation And more importantly, we're talking about how we adjust to the new normal. And keeping in conjunction with the times, I thought it will be very prudent to talk about how the workplace, and the workforce would evolve going forward, and how technology will play a very, very big part in that. So, uh, can you all see my screen?
Yes, sir, it's fine, sir.
You can see my screen, all right?
Yes, sir, it's fine.
Okay, great. So, what I want to talk today is about, first thing is, what is this new normal? What are experts' opinion on this topic of the new normal? The future of work, workplace, and workforce. How is it going to pan out going forward? The digital skills, I think that is very, very important, because what we have seen today is that companies who have not adopted digital, or who have been very early in their adoption of digital, have been impacted very badly. And those who are fairly mature in the use of digital, I think they've been less impacted by the pandemic. I'm going to spend a little more time on the skills needed now. What are the skills that are needed, both technical as well as the soft skills? How that will serve all of you all in the post-COVID era? And I want to leave about 15, 20 minutes towards the end for question and answers. Now, when you talk about the new normal, how is the future of shopping going to look like? I think we're going to see situations like this. You're going to wear a mask and go to a shopping mall and pick up stuff. And as we enter a large mall, we're going to have situations where somebody would thermal scan us, check whether our temperature is high or not. We'll probably have sanitizers there to make sure that we clean our hands before we get in. And we will also see situations where within large shopping malls, you'll probably have technology that will be used to monitor uh, whether or not people are adhering to social distancing, right? So you'll probably have less crowds, thermal scanners perhaps at every store that we enter, right? So the future of shopping is definitely going to change, perhaps in the next 6 to 9 months. How about the future of dine-in? Today, you have restaurants which are offering only takeaway, but the government has now announced that we can actually go into a restaurant, and there are restaurants which have already opened today. And so this is what it will look like, right? So you'll probably have waiters with the thermal shield, with the mask, with gloves on, serving us food, and we'll probably also have these glass shields that will separate one from the other, and each of us probably wearing masks on before we actually eat. And we'll also have people sitting in isolation, ensuring the restaurants will ensure that there is enough social distancing maintained, so there's enough space between tables, right? So this is perhaps going to evolve, and we'll probably see how this works out. Our whole dining experience is going to change going forward. Now, how about the workplace? So we're going to have a situation where we'll be wearing our masks on. We'll have a lot of spacing between tables, and even when people want to interact, social distancing norms have to be adhered to. And when we are in the cafeteria and wanting to have our meals, we'll probably have these glass shields, right? So the whole workplace is going to kind of change, definitely in the next 6 to 9 months. And we're also going to have perhaps more mothers, more women maybe working from home. I think the one thing which is definitely going to change is that we're going to see a lot more women probably getting back into the workforce. So while some have called it work from home, we're also going to coin a new acronym called Women from Home, WFH, Women from Home. We're probably going to see people multitasking, right? So while somebody, a parent is actually working on his laptop, he'll probably be feeding his child at the same time. He'll probably be managing our pets as we are working at the same time. And then this whole collaboration, right? So thanks to technology like Zoom and other video collaboration platforms, we are able to communicate today. And we're going to probably see more of this, companies collaborating internally with their clients, with their partners, right? So the whole workplace is definitely going to change. Now, thanks to technology today, we were actually able to get this whole setup for work from home very, very quickly, right? So I think third week of March, or 22nd or 24th of March, is when the government announced a lockdown. And ever since then, I think companies have done a great job, especially the large IT companies, because for them it's a massive exercise in terms of making sure that people are equipped with all the devices, the connectivity, the security. And I think most of the IT companies have done a great job in making sure that they were able to enable this whole setup for work from home. We're seeing a lot more collaboration tools. People are being trained to use it. Various different platforms that are used today. We are using Zoom. There are companies use Microsoft Teams. They use Cisco WebEx. So a lot of these tools which are being used today. Security obviously very, very important, especially companies who are working on client projects which are very, very confidential in nature. How do you secure the remote access? What tools and services company uses, right? So that's very important. And our home has actually become like a virtual office, right? It's like a branch connected to the office, right? So it's like a virtual office in its sense. Now, how about companies who have already started to work? So while the government has mandated that you could have companies getting the people back to work, so what kind of steps and measures that companies have taken today to ensure that people come in adhering to all the regulations and the measures, right? So here I would like to highlight that a lot of technology is being used today for that, right? So from the time you actually enter into your office, today there are startups who offer solutions where you could have an IoT enabled uh, thermal sensor that can be connected to the metal detector. Some of the offices do have metal detectors, and you can actually thermal scan the person, right? So just using just by pointing towards the thermal camera, you point your palm, and then by measuring also your forehead, they're able to measure the temperature, and then that information is relayed through a network to a dashboard where you can see whether the temperature is high or not. And if it's high, then they isolate that person. Then they also have contactless sanitizers, right? So you want to make it as contactless and touchless as possible, right? So you have contactless sanitizers that are being used today. The CCTVs in the office today constantly monitor people inside. So in case you have a situation where 5 or 6 people are gathering together and not maintaining social distancing norms, those video feeds are then sent to the right stakeholder, and they can actually take corrective action and then alert someone to just go and make sure that people adhere to the social distancing guidelines, right? So a lot of tech is going to be used going forward. We're also seeing co-working spaces. I'm sure you must have heard of a company called WeWork. They have these co-working spaces where multiple companies actually share, a large facility. So you just get maybe one desk or two desks or one specific area where you can work in. So we'll probably see many companies use co-working spaces. So especially for people who are very far off and may not want to come to the office traveling that distance, so they might probably ask them to work from the nearest co-working space. So we're going to see that also evolve going forward. Hot desking, this is a very interesting concept. So here you're not going to have company dedicate a desk for an employee. So what's going to happen is that in case I'm at home and I wish to go to the office, I use an app, and using the app, I'll figure out whether I need the desk and for how long I need the desk. And I make that booking through the app. And then I come to the office and that desk then gets assigned to me. So these are called hot desking models, where you get the desk only when you want to. And after you use it, that desk becomes free for someone else to use, right? So this is definitely going to pick up from a workplace standpoint. We're also going to see what is called satellite offices with hub and spoke model. And what I mean by that is, for example, if you take a large IT company, what they might do is they may have smaller offices in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, right? So today most of the IT companies have their presence in all the big cities, right? Some of them are there in tier 1 cities, but what we're probably going to see is that they might set up smaller offices in tier 2 and tier 3 cities, so that people may not necessarily have to come to a Bangalore or a Delhi or a Chennai or a Hyderabad. They might work in somewhere in Trichy or maybe in Madurai, where they might have a small office there, a satellite office. So this is called a hub and spoke model. And that way it makes it very convenient for people to work from where actually they're based out of, right? So if their native place is one, say a Madurai, they might probably work from there and without having to come to a Chennai or a bigger place like Bangalore. So we're probably going to see that happen going forward. And then what's going to happen is that you're going to have a lot of enterprise apps that would be used to book whatever services that you want in an office. So if you're in an office and say you want to book a meeting room, you can just using an app book that meeting room. Any facilities that you want will all be touchless, right? So we're going to use a lot more technology going forward, in the post-COVID era. I just wanted to highlight one particular statement from the TCS chief operating officer. So he made a statement about a month back saying that they envisage a situation where 25% of their workforce at their facilities, can be productive, right? So they may not need 100% workforce. With just 25% of their workforce at their offices, they can actually be productive, and the rest of the 75% can actually work from home, right? So it's really interesting, and we'll have to see how this will pan out going forward. Uh, we'll also see a lot more remote working, anytime and anywhere accessibility. So you can use any device, you can use your tablet, your phone, your laptop. So an employee will actually get that flexibility to work from anywhere they want. There'll be a lot more flexibility. You can choose whether you want to go to the office or you want to work from home, and there'll be a lot more automation, a lot more virtual collaboration. I think this is something which has already happened, but this will there'll be a far more proliferation of virtual collaboration going forward. People can collaborate from wherever you want to, and that's the new reality. So we're going to have an operating model where you're going to have a mix of both physical and virtual offices. The physical offices and your home will turn into a virtual office or an office branch. And we're also going to see these uptake in as a service models, where I mentioned earlier that you could use co-working spaces. You use based on the amount of time that you want, and you pay the co-working space owner only for the time that you've actually used the offices. A couple of interesting quotes from a couple of very senior executives. The CEO of Tech Mahindra, who mentioned that there might probably be a situation where the campus may not need 10,000 people in one place. They can actually have 100 people in a smaller town. As I mentioned earlier, you can be in a tier 3, tier 4 city or a town and actually work from there without having to go to a bigger city to work at. So this is from a workplace standpoint. And just a few quotes from some big companies. For example, TCS, as I mentioned, said that 75% of the employees will work from home by 2025. Facebook and Google, they've already announced that they're going to allow employees to work from home till the end of the year. There's a company called Unacademy who provides online training and learning. They said that 60% of staff will work from home forever. I think it's a very profound statement, right? So this is definitely going to become a very, very realistic proposition for companies. Now, having covered workplace, let's look at workforce. Now, when you look at the workforce, what you're going to do is you're going to see roles being clearly defined. So there would be roles which are very business critical, which would need the person to actually be in the office. So for example, if somebody has got a role of monitoring and managing of an infrastructure within the office, for example, in an office, you'll have a lot of servers, storage, compute infrastructure, right? So in case you need someone to be in the office to manage that, just in case there's a physical problem with any of the servers or the storage, you'll need somebody there, right? So roles which are needed where people have to be in the office, those roles will be clearly defined, and they'll be defined as business critical. So those guys will be in the office. And roles which could be like sales and marketing, support staff, where they don't need to necessarily be in the office, so they can actually be working from home, right? So you'll have remote working roles. Then, as I mentioned, the employees will actually get that choice. I think from a workforce standpoint, I think it's great to have that flexibility where I can choose when I want to go to the office and when I want to work from home. And I think I just want to make a comment here that, I don't see a situation where everybody would be wanting to work from home, because we are all by nature, social in nature, right? So we would want to, at some point in time, going to the office, going and meeting our colleagues, meeting our, our bosses, and we need that personal collaboration. We need that personal connect So I strongly feel that uh, going forward, if somebody says working 5 days a week from office, he might probably have a thought where maybe he might go to the office once a week or twice a week, and the rest of the time he's working from home. But there's definitely not going to be a situation where there won't be any offices. There will always be that need for people to go to the office for that personal connect and for that personal collaboration. Now, from a workforce standpoint, what we're also going to see is that humans and machines will collaborate more, right? So you have robots in factories. You have what is called cobos. Cobos are collaborative robots. That is a person working with a robo. And robots are not just meant to be in factories. Today you have robots in restaurants. You have robots in hospitals. We're also going to see a lot of chatbots. So using a tool called robotic process automation, you can have chatbots. There'll be conversational type of chatbots. There'll also be a lot of AI that will built in so that the chatbot is intelligent enough to understand the sentiment of the conversation, right? So we are going to see this paradigm play out in the future: humans and machines working together, and that's a very, very interesting paradigm. And I think this combination of humans and machines working together, that I think will create a lot of value for companies, because what's going to happen is that whatever tasks are very mundane, what are very repetitive, can actually be done by machines, and the humans will be more involved in things around innovation, creativity, and all that. So I think when you have a combination of human and machines working together, I think that is going to be a very lethal combination. I think the value that a company would get from that will be significant. Now, we're also going to have workforce which is reconfigurable. And what I mean by that is you're going to have a combination of people who are full-time employees for companies. You could have contract workers. You could also have gig workers. I don't know whether you heard of the term gig economy, but gig economy is basically people who are freelancers, right? So they're not tied to a contract with the company. So if a company has a specific project, you would probably do the project for 2 months, 3 months, and once you're done with that project, you can actually move to another project, right? So you'll probably have a situation where one person might be working for 4 or 5 different companies on 4 or 5 different projects, and the projects can be 1 month, 2 months, 6 months, 1 year, whatever it is. So we're going to see a lot more of this going forward. You would also have contingent bench, so people like housewives, many of them who would have left work after their kids have been born and want to take care of the kids, and if they want to actually come back to work, I think this is a great opportunity, because now with this pandemic, it's clearly proven that people can actually work from home and productivity can be really, really high. And so this will open up a lot more opportunities for women who have taken a break from work to come back. There might be even opportunities for people who've retired and want to come back to the work. And they may not necessarily need to sign up for a full-term contract with the customer. They can actually take up a small project for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Now, in terms of use of artificial intelligence and analytics, and I think this is something which we'll see a lot more adoption of going forward, right? So, see, what is AI? Artificial intelligence is trying to solve a business problem for a customer and to be able to predict outcomes, right? So we are actually going to a data economy. Okay, so you're going to see a lot of data being generated, and how do you make sense of all the humongous amount of data that is generated? You need to analyze the data, you need to make sense of the data, and you need to make decisions based on the data insights that you get. And hence I see a future where people will really need to use the power of this data, use analytics, use the power of AI, where you're able to predict, what might happen. And I think there would be a need for people to constantly reskill. AI is just one of them, but there are multiple such skills which I'll be talking about in my subsequent slides. There'll be new project management protocols that will be placed for people, right? So you would have a set of protocols for people working in the office and a set of people working outside, right? For example, someone who's a gig worker and is not in a full-time contract with the company might have very limited access to the enterprise applications, right? So you'll give them limited access, whereas somebody who's a full-time employee will probably get access to all the enterprise-related applications and tools. And workforce would also be reconfigurable and distributed, right? So you could actually configure how people can be distributed. So for example, You could have people in the office, you could have people from home, people in a satellite office. So companies have that flexibility to reconfigure based on the need, right? So I think this is something which is definitely going to increase significantly going forward. The ability for companies to make that call, who has to be in the office, who can actually work from home, and ultimately the choice can be with the employee if they really want to. Now, having touched upon workforce, let me touch upon work culture. Now, I think one thing which is very, very important today, especially for managers, people in leadership positions, is to really have empathy when it comes to dealing with their people under them, right? So, because we have never, none of us have ever faced a situation like this where we are at home. There's so much of fear lurking around us with the coronavirus. Just uh, there's absolutely no sign right now whether this is going to get contained or not. So always there is that fear. There is also fear among people whether their jobs will be there. So all these factors playing on their mind, and the mental health of people also very, very important, right? So while managers, while people in leadership are just wanting to are not just ensuring people finish their work, but also ensuring that from a mental health standpoint, they're all right, right? They don't have any, you know, um, any mental issues which is affecting their thought process and their mindset. So the need for people, managers especially, to be empathetic to their people, to the people working around them, under them. Engagement methods, engagement methods again. Today managers use a combination of techniques, right? So you in an office environment, obviously you can just do a face to face, but given the current situation, you'll probably do an audio call with people around you, or with people at home, or you could do a video session, right? So multiple engagement methods are there. Policies around health, safety, regulations, right? So I think from a culture standpoint, these are things that one has to seriously look at, because just look at the IT industry. Until this pandemic had hit the IT industry, uh, the government did not permit work from home for people in the IT and BPM industry. When I say work from home, there are certain specific projects around healthcare and banking where people who worked on projects related to banking and healthcare would have to go to the office and work from there. However, when the pandemic struck, there was the obvious need for people to work from home. They could not obviously go to the office. So the NASCOM, which is an IT industry body, worked very closely with the government to make sure that the required permissions are given so that people can work on projects related to banking and healthcare and other critical client projects. They can actually go to home and work from there. Now, reskilling and training, and I think this is a very, very, very important thing, right? So um, uh, when it comes to training, I think most large companies and even the mid-tier companies have a lot of content, have a lot of very good learning platforms, right? So we are used to face-to-face instructor-led training, and we perhaps also use blended training where a lot of the courses are available online, but remote learning now becomes very, very important, right? So I think the opportunities now to learn new skills, whether it's related to your job or even soft skills, I think that will get enhanced significantly. And I think the need is for people to reskill and upskill, right? And I think one very important message that I would like to leave with you is one has to be in a lifelong learning mode. Okay, we have to be in that lifelong learning mode. We just cannot say that, okay, I've learned something and this is good enough. Technology is changing at a very, very fast pace, and the need for people to constantly learn, unlearn what is not relevant and learn what is relevant, I think that is really, really critical. And I think one must specifically spend some time, take time to learn new things. Maybe not necessarily to your work, but maybe related to adjacent industries or areas which are of interest to you. But learning is something which should never stop. And this whole borderless collaborative innovation, right? So when you talk about innovation, you want to come up with something very new which will have an impact, a positive impact, right? And it's borderless, right? So today there are no borders. One can collaborate from wherever you are, right, using any device. And so this whole innovation, this innovation culture, which was largely confined to an office, today is completely borderless. One can be anywhere. We can still collaborate, come up with new ideas, discuss those new ideas, and maybe take innovation to a new level altogether, right? So this is all called collaborative innovation. And finally, from a culture standpoint, your whole tracking and measurement of work is completely going to be outcome based. It is not going to be based on number of hours that you put in the work, right? So one has to work smart, not work. I mean, hard work is important, but one needs to really work smart, right? So what managers want, what company leadership wants is all the work that you put in, has it resulted in an outcome, right? So your whole performance tracking and measurement will be based on outcomes that you would deliver. I think that is from a culture standpoint, which will really come into play. Now, talking about future of work, and here, uh, in terms of the work itself, right? So, while I come to the skills later, this is a slide which I took from Forrester, and they actually came up with this analysis. They said that there definitely going to be a job loss, and we've already seen that happen, right? So there's so many jobs, which not just India, but so many countries. There's been significant job loss, and one of the reason being that a lot of automation has kicked in, right? So a lot of the companies are using automation, right, to kind of anything which is repetitive, anything which is dull, dirty, dangerous, which is very which is something which you and I may not necessarily want to do, which is completely repetitive. So those kind of jobs, there's a 29% job loss in that. That's one of their findings. Secondly, they also said that 13% new automation jobs will be created, right? So when you do automation, say when you use things like AI, machine learning, robotic process automation, when you're automating certain tasks or certain processes, who who's the one who actually works on that? It's people, right? So you need people to, as I mentioned earlier, people working with machines, right? So this will be about 13%. So 13% new jobs will be created. It's called automation dividends. Third dimension is job transformation. So a lot of the work that we do today will get restructured as per Forest, right? So when I say restructured, uh, again, it brings in that dimension where you need to work with the machine, right? So people working with AI, people working with machines. So a lot of that work will get restructured. And so there they said that 80% of that will be restructured work. And finally, they call it skills to tasks. So your skill will be mapped to a specific task. So if there is a task, they look at what skill you have, and if you have that skill for the task, there'll be that mapping, one-to-one mapping that. So 30% of new jobs will come from that, right? And one more interesting finding. This is not from Forrester, but Cognizant, one of the top IT companies. They actually mentioned in one of their earlier reports that jobs that are going to come up in 2030, today we can't even define those kind of jobs. I just, we can't define. There are millions of jobs that are going to get created in 5 years, 10 years from now, where today we can't define what those kind of jobs are, right? So this is from a future of work standpoint, and as it relates to the different types of jobs. Now I'm just going to switch gears a little bit and talk about how the overall business landscape is evolving, right? So we are seeing digital evolution happening, right? So companies are transforming themselves digitally. It's an internal transformation where they need to transform their internal operations, transform people. Skills transformation of people, very, very important. So that is one dimension. And in every aspect, whether it is dealing with clients, dealing with partners, uh, internal collaboration, a lot of digital tools being used. So this whole physical and digital is blurring, right? So there's no boundaries today. It's physical and digital today, which is merging. And the pace at which this is happening is very, very fast, right? So these are things that we are grappling with today. And what are the trends that we are seeing from a technology standpoint, right? So we're seeing cloud. A lot of companies, enterprises are moving their applications to the cloud, right? So you have, different types of clouds. You have a private cloud where you create a kind of a cloud environment in your own office. Then you have the public cloud where all of the enterprise apps on the cloud. And then you have a hybrid cloud where you could have some apps on the enterprise on their own data center and some on the cloud, right? But we are seeing definitely a trend where companies are actually moving most of the enterprise applications to cloud. And that is actually going to throw up a lot more opportunities going forward, right? So there would be need for people to understand legacy applications, and how to migrate them to cloud. So cloud architects, good amount of jobs in that space. Second trend is mobility, right? So mobility is where you want to be working from anywhere, from any device, right? So I don't want to be confined to the office. We talked about it earlier. I want to use my phone, my tablet to access enterprise apps, and I should be able to work from anywhere I want to, right? We're also seeing a world where there's this, someone had mentioned software is eating the world, right? So a lot of software being used. So even connectivity, networking is getting software defined. A lot of software that is being used to do orchestration, to manage, control things. IoT, and this is something which is close to my heart because I'm responsible for the overall IoT business for AT&T, and we're seeing a lot of IoT use cases evolve and a lot of deployments of IoT happening. There is a prediction that by 2030 there would be 500 billion things that would be connected to the internet. 500 billion things. When you say things, this could be any physical asset, anything which is not a PC or a laptop or a phone. Any physical asset, cars, machines, pallets, boxes, aeroplanes, you name it. There is an estimate that 500 billion such things would be connected to the internet in the next 10 years. And when you have 500 billion things connected, imagine the amount of data that is going to be generated, right? A huge amount of data that is going to be generated. And this will throw open opportunities for people who can manage and play around with that data, right? So there would be a lot of opportunities in the data science space, right? So and people who acquire skills around data, whether data scientist or a data analyst, people who could manage both structured data or unstructured data, I think roles, jobs in that area will significantly grow. We are already seeing today in India, there is a shortage of data scientists. There's a huge demand for data scientists, and unfortunately, there's not enough supply. And finally, security, right? Because every asset that you connect to the internet would have an IP address, and that becomes hackable. So how do you secure your endpoints? How do you secure the network? How do you secure your data and applications? It may be on a customer prem or it could be on the cloud. Security obviously is very, very important. And again, today in India, we are short of almost 3 million cybersecurity professionals. There's a huge demand for cybersecurity, and a lot more opportunities will be coming up in the cybersecurity space going forward. Right? So today, digital transformation is not just a nice to have; it is a must have. And companies who do not adopt digital, their whole survival itself is in question. And one very important dimension of digital transformation is how do you improve customer experience, right? And companies who do not use digital transformation to improve customer experience, I think for them survival is going to be a big, big question mark. And talking of customer experience, this is a slide that I normally use when I talk about this. And these are examples. I'm not sure whether you've heard of these, some of these instances where Netflix, all of us use Netflix, right? Netflix used to compete against a company called Blockbuster, and Blockbuster used to do video rental service. And people had to go to the video store, pick up a video cassette, and use that. And what Netflix did is that they completely disrupted that market and started to offer streaming services, video streaming. All of us are using Netflix today, right? Most of us rather, right? So Netflix completely disrupted that video rental market. And how did they manage to do that? And one big reason being that Blockbuster did not change their model. They stuck to giving videos on rent, and if people did not give the video cassette back on time, they used to charge them late fees, right? So obviously, it is not something which customers would like. And Netflix completely disrupted that market by offering streaming video, and today all of us enjoy the benefit of video streaming. Uber, I think all of us been using Uber, will probably continue to use it. Of course, they would have to be a little more careful in terms of how they handle post-COVID. A lot more sanitization, thermal scanners, etc. But they did not kill the taxi business. It is because of the limited access and fare control, right? So taxi services earlier, very limited access, expensive cost. Uber completely changed that model, right, by offering a pay based on usage, right? So you just book an app, use an app, and get into Uber and use it, right? So great example of how they completely disrupted the taxi business. I'm not going to go into the other details, but Apple again completely disrupted the music industry. Amazon disrupted the retail industry by offering online shopping. Could buy pretty much anything online, right? And Amazon is really, really very, very strong in customer experience. In fact, the CEO Jeff Bezos is very customer obsessed, customer focus obsessed, and that's the reason why Amazon is doing so well. Airbnb, again, another company, completely disrupted the hotel industry, where you can use an Airbnb app to book a hotel room or a small place for based on the number of hours that you're actually going to use, right? So I like the way the slide ends. It says technology by itself is not the disruptor. Not being customer centric is the biggest threat to any business. I think that's so true. Now, what are these technologies that are being used today, right? So I've just listed out 8 here, right? So AI, augmented reality, virtual reality, blockchain, drones, IoT, robotics, and 3D printing. And in each of these areas, there's going to be a tremendous amount of job opportunity that might come up in the future. AI for sure, because leads to it deals with a lot of data. IoT, as I mentioned, sensorization, and especially in the IoT field, there'd be a need for people to design good quality IoT hardware, right? And I think India, as a country, we are not great so far in producing good quality hardware. A lot of the hardware that we're using in IoT is all imported from China. The chipsets come from there, the modules come from there. So, and with the government's focus on trying to make India more self-resilient and so self-reliant, there would be a lot more opportunities for companies in India to make good quality IoT hardware. So I think this will also throw up a lot of job opportunities for people who want to take up a career in IoT hardware in terms of understanding how do you assemble a device, understanding the the programming of chipsets. So that is one area. IoT solution architects. How do you build a solution for IoT? So tremendous amount of job opportunity for IoT, because IoT today in India, we kind of just scratched the surface. There's a huge opportunity because adoption in India is very, very less. And we're going to see a lot more companies adopting IoT, and that is definitely going to throw open a lot of job opportunities. Now, why digital skills, right? So I make the statement that every job, whatever function, be it HR, be it administration, be it sales, marketing, everyone would need a tech bent of mind. So what is very important is, while you have good technology skills, while you build a good competency in that area, what is also very important is to understand business, because technology by itself is not good enough. Technology needs to solve a business problem, right? So a company might have a business problem. How do you solve that business problem? Which means that you need to understand what that company's business is, what are those problem areas. And I think someone who's got an understanding of technology and how technology can be applied to solve that business problem, I think that is very, very important, right? So I urge all of you all that whatever stream that you take, whatever areas that you want to focus on, and if it's going to be purely tech, great, that's fine. But then you also need to understand the business aspect of it, how technology can impact and affect business. I think that is very, very important. And here also I wanted to add that, and it actually ties into this point, that a lot of the non-techies are now taking up courses in machine learning, data science, cloud, and all that stuff. So, and this is very, very interesting. And it actually proves the point that every job would have some tech element in it, and hence the need for people who are not technical to also have some good understanding of all these technologies. And as I said, AI is just not about coding, or for that matter, any technology that you use, and if using a lot of software in it, just not about coding. The whole objective is, how do you create a good model and solve business problems, right? And that is very, very important. And that is why digital skills matter. And here I wanted to share with you the various options that you have, right? And we are going to move into a data-driven. We are already in a data-driven economy, and this will only get proliferated even more going forward. And there are enough options today, for people like you still in college. Some of you are finished, maybe finishing this year or next year. A lot of options available, right? So in terms of what are the courses that you could do, machine learning, Ethereum, Python. Python, I think, is one of the most prominently used programming languages today, not just to program chipsets in IoT hardware, but even as the language, as a base for data science, analytics, and machine learning. Cloud, as I said, is so important. Uh, Good to have a certification or a course in cloud foundation and IoT hardware and programming. So I think there are enough courses that one can look at. There are also other things that I wanted to share with you about company called Code Ninjas. So they have offered a 21-day challenge, a paid 2-month course on Python and other technologies. There's a company called Simply Learn, an online learning platform. So they have 21-day courses on Java certification. And similarly, Great Learning and Upgrad, long-term and diploma courses on all the emerging technologies. Other couple of areas, and I think these are some things that you should seriously keep an eye on. There are a lot of these developers and community hiring platforms, who keep conducting virtual coding marathon sessions just to kind of keep the coding spirit going, right? So I think you'll have to keep a watch on this. It will be very good for all of y'all to participate in these kind of platforms, where you get access to these communities, and a lot of knowledge sharing happens. A lot of problems get discussed, and even whether it is business problems or coding related matters, you get access to this platform, and you're able to connect with so many people. And I think you'll definitely have to keep an eye on this. There is a company called Skillenza. So very recently they conducted a COVID-19 hackathon in which 6,000 odd people had participated, and they actually wanted to solve a problem. They've actually built an app for seamless e-learning, right? So e-learning has increased significantly, right? Almost every college school today are using e-learning, and they actually built an app to make it seamless. They also worked on a project where they could 3D print ventilators, right? So our ventilator costs are very high. Even now it's high, but they actually worked on a solution how you could 3D print it so that you can bring the cost down. And then some of the other things, these tech community working groups, the AWS community in Pune, tech community events. Sorry, they have these platforms where you can solve a lot of these challenges. And actually, very interestingly, these tech community events can also turn into a hunting ground for people to get recruited into, right? So it's good to watch out for those community events. AWS conducted one very, very, very recently in Pune, and they just don't have a community for the sake of having it. They actually try to see what challenges or problems they can solve, right? So AWS came with a really specific problem. They wanted to reduce the storage costs on cloud, and they asked developers to build a solution for that, and even faster ways to move data from on-prem to the cloud. Very interesting. Similarly, there are a lot of these meetups which keep happening on different topics, on different technologies. Like, for example, there are meetups on Python. I, in fact, participate in meetups on IoT, right? So good to keep a watch on that. GitHub, I'm sure you must have heard of it, one of the largest online open source developer community owned by Microsoft. So you could even think of joining that community. You get to learn a lot. You can contribute to the building of an open source product or a platform. Hackathons, I think I'm sure you would have done hackathons in your colleges, but I think good to continue to participate in that. The company called Hasgeek, who run a lot of technology events in India, a lot of boot camps being conducted for people to learn new skills. Very recently, all these companies like Codeworks, etc., conducted boot camps. And there's also a company called Millennium Garage Program. They made the freshers build products or tools in collaboration with the company's team for COVID-related projects. Another interesting trend that we're seeing, and this is to do with what is called income sharing agreement options. So there are companies like Masai School in Bangalore, a company called Pestotech, and InterviewBit Academy. They came up with a model where they train people who are out of college, or even somebody who is doing his final year, and they train them on a specific technology. And they get, for example, Pestotech did one on full stack programming, right, where you get to work on the front end to build a user interface, and also get to work on the back end, right? So we'll also see a lot more jobs for someone who has the capability to do full stack programming. So they came up with a three-month full stack programming course. And what is interesting is that once you finish that course, you don't need to pay them immediately. After you get a job and you get a minimum, say, salary, over a period of 2 to 3 years, you can pay some percentage of a salary to them, right? So this is called an income sharing agreement. It's learn now and pay later, and provided you get a minimum amount of salary. right? So there's a contract between the student and that institution, right? So this is something that we'll probably see play out more going forward. Very quickly, what are the hot jobs that you're seeing? I've just taken a report from a company called Hired's 2020 State of Software Engineers report. They came up with a list of really hot jobs for 2020, the area of AR, VR, gaming. I think we're going to see a lot more gamification. For example, even learning tools today are gamified. Computer vision, machine learning, embedded systems. So these are real hot jobs today. And of course, what are the jobs in demand now in the future? Just given that here, cybersecurity, I told you about, cloud architect, digital marketing. So someone who wants to pursue a career in digital marketing, I think there are a lot of opportunities, because today we're using a lot of social media tools to promote brands, promote products. Someone who wants to use these kind of tools, they'll be taught how to do so. And mobile app developer, I was reading a report, IDC, it's a well-known research and consulting company. They said that over the next 5 years, there'll be about 500,000 mobile apps that would be developed, right? And just during this COVID situation, last 3 months or so, a lot of apps were developed, right? So whether it is on Android platform or whether it is on Apple's iOS, a lot of opportunity for people who want to build career in building mobile apps. Quality assurance engineers, I think we are also here. Testing will become a very, very important part of it. So in terms of testing of code that you've written and all that stuff. And here I also wanted to make a mention when you talk about cybersecurity. There is, a lot of these companies come up with what is called bug bounty programs. I'm not sure whether you heard of it, but what essentially this program is that, and very recently Facebook and Apple, I think, released some thousands and hundreds of, almost like, I think over the last 1 year, about $1 million to various people, especially the ethical hackers. So what this bug bounty program is that if say there's a vulnerability in the Facebook app, or Apple iOS has got a vulnerability, they ask people, ethical hackers, to hack into them to figure out if there's any vulnerability. And people who are able to do that and go back to Facebook or an Apple or anyone else and say that, hey, I found this hack and this will make your system very vulnerable, they're actually paid for it, right? So there is tremendous opportunity cybersecurity space, especially those who want to get into things like ethical hacking, because the dollars for identifying vulnerabilities in their systems. Now, before I move to the last slide, which is more on the soft skills, I just wanted to talk about the evolution of the employee, right? So in the past, we had fixed timings. We're going to the future where you can work from anytime, work anytime, right? So as long as you finish your work, as long as you delivered your outcomes, I think companies would be happy, the leadership would be happy. You could work from anywhere. I covered that. You could use any device. The focus will be on outputs. Focus would be on what you delivered. And we're no longer going to have a corporate ladder. We keep hearing about this term corporate ladder, right? I need to climb the ladder. Now it's a question of how you create your own ladder, right? So we're going to see organizations having more flatter hierarchies, not having too many layers. So there would be those opportunities where you can create your own ladder if you obviously do really well in your work. Your work is also going to be customized, not going to be predefined unlike in the past. There'll be a lot more collaboration where you'll be able to share more information with people. You're going to rely a lot on collaborative technologies and this whole thing on adaptive learning, right? So ability to learn from anywhere, and whatever learning that you get, how do you adapt it to a specific business situation? I think that is very, very important, right? So this whole focus on adaptive learning. Then of course democratized learning and teaching, right? So any platform, you don't have to be confined to an office to just sit and do and go through a 1 hour instructor-led training. You can learn from anywhere, and of course when you learn, you also want to teach, right? I've come to my last slide, and here I just wanted to highlight what are the key attributes one need to have to really be successful going forward. And first thing which I wanted to highlight is that high levels of integrity, and this is non-negotiable. You need to have that high levels of integrity. Focus, I don't have to emphasize more on this. Very, very important. If you take up something, make sure that you focus and finish it. hard work, no substitute for hard work. I think you all have to work hard, work smart, constant learning and skilling. As I mentioned earlier, one has to be in a lifelong learning mode. Nobody can ever say that I've learned, so I don't need to learn more. You have to be in the constant learning mode. Balanced lifestyle, I think it's so important. While you obviously work on your job, you need to make sure that your health is taken care of. Your spiritual health is also fine. So, whatever meditation that you want to do. So I think very important to have that balanced lifestyle, going the extra mile to help people. Collaboration and teamwork, very, very important, especially now when we're not in the office, when we're all working from home. How do you collaborate virtually? How do you empathize with other people? Teamwork together, so important, virtually or whether you're in the confines of the office. Critical thinking, and I think this is something also very, very important, because it's important for us not to just accept status quo for what it is. The need to have that curious mind, right? To ask why, right? So if you have a problem, how do you get to the root cause of the problem? And here you can maybe do a Google search on the 5 why principles, but I just don't have the time to explain what it is. But how do you get to the root cause of the problem? By asking 5 whys, you can actually get to that root cause. And this only happens when you think, about what exactly caused that problem. And your critical thinking mindset is very, very important. Need to be creative. I think in an era, or in a world where you're going to have a lot more data, a lot more tools that are being used, like AI, machine learning, and all that, the need for people to work with machines, one has to really be creative in terms of how you do your work. Problem solving, yes, very, very important, because these are things which machines cannot do. Machines can't be creative. It's us who bring that creativity to the table, and then we work with machines. And last but not the least, and I think this is a perfect example of this, adaptability to uncertainty. We are living in uncertain times, right? And what is certain is uncertainty, right? So how do you adapt to the uncertainty? Today it's COVID-19. 1 year later, it's going to be something else. 5 years later, it's going to be something else, right? So we are living in a very uncertain world. And the need for us to adapt to any uncertain environment, I think that is very, very important, right? So I think these are important things, I think, which I wanted to highlight to you, because a lot of these which I have followed have helped me get the success that I've got. So I'd like to once again thank the Savita management, especially Beulah ma'am, for giving me this opportunity to speak to all of you all. And I'm now open to taking questions. Thank
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. That was actually really a wonderful session, and we convey our heartfelt thanks to you for sharing your valuable knowledge with us. We have a few questions from our participants, sir. Shall we take it up?
Sure. Please go ahead.
Yes, sir. The first question, what about the real estate business and logistics business like Amazon, food delivery systems? And what about the life of call taxi drivers and how can they survive?
Yeah, so let me first take, what was the first one? Amazon, right?
Amazon, yes, sir. Amazon, and it was about call taxi and real estate.
Yeah, real estate. So real estate, interestingly, we'll see a downward, in the next 6 to 9 months, the real estate industry will not really do well, because companies who are thinking of wanting to build large offices and campuses will have second thoughts now, given that they've seen how people can actually work from home. So the real estate industry, commercial real estate industry, will definitely take a hit in the 6 to 9 months time frame. And after that, we really don't know what will happen. But at least 6 to 9 months, a big hit on the real estate industry. Coming to the call taxi industry, shared mobility, like Uber, Ola, that has got hit over the last 3 months. And I foresee a situation where next 3 to 6 months, also there would be a hit to the shared mobility space, because people would be having doubts whether they should be getting into an Ola car or Uber car, unless and until they really have a need to take something like that, if they don't have their own private vehicles. So we're going to see a situation where people might want to buy their own two-wheelers or their own four-wheelers and rely less on shared mobility. But I think it's the onus is on companies like an Ola and Uber to make sure that they build enough confidence among people, right? So by making sure that the driver who's driving you around is not infected, he uses sanitizers inside, and after every drive they sanitize that car properly, so they'll have to take all those checks and balances. But yes, there is definitely going to be an impact on the shared mobility space in the 6 to 9 months period.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir. The next question, what about agricultural department? Because without going to the fields, harvesting is not possible. So what kind of reforms will take place in the agricultural field?
Yeah, very good question. And I think the only industry which did reasonably well in the last 3 4 months was agriculture, interestingly, because that was the essential services industry, so that was not impacted. Right, yes, there were problems with the harvesting because we just finished the rabi crop and farmers had shortage of people to harvest, but they nevertheless managed, so they had to pay more for people within that community to make sure that they can use them. Plus of course you need farming equipment like harvesters. So agriculture was less impacted, and I think the proof was that the Food Corporation of India has record food grain stored today. And talking of reforms, I think one big reform that was announced by the government very recently was, the opening up of the farming sector. So earlier, farmers, if they want to sell their produce, had to go to the nearest uh, mandis or the farming markets, and sell their produce there. And from there, it goes to people like you and me, consumers like you and me. Now, the farmers, the biggest reform is that farmers can sell to anyone. They don't have to go to the nearest mandi and sell their produce. If you want to buy something from a farmer, you can do so directly now. So I think that was one of the biggest reform that the government announced from an agriculture standpoint. And we're also going to see a lot more technology going to be used in agriculture going forward. For example, water, a lot of water being used for many cultivation of crops. So they're going to use technology now to optimize water usage, optimize pump usage so that the less CO2 emission happens, use of data to make sure that the farmers are sowing at the right time, using the right amount of fertilizers, right amount of pesticides, using pictures of crops or trees so that you can find out whether there's any disease that has infested them. Again, there you use AI and machine learning, right? So we're going to see a lot more technology going to be used in the agri space going forward. But that's the only solution, because uh, you know by 2050 we'll have about uh, I would say there's a World Economic Forum report which says by 2050 we'll have about more than 15 billion people living on the face of the earth. And to produce for so many people, you need to have a 50% increase in food security, which means that your farming has to improve, and use of technology will play a big part in that.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. The next question, one person has asked, what is digital dependency?
What is digital dependency? A very um, digital dependency. See, can you ask him to be a little more specific, because it's fairly vague when you say digital
Okay,
dependency.
like he wants to know what does the term mean, sir? Maybe what actually the term digital dependency means.
So, see, digital technology is, see, we are living in an analog world, right? So, I'm sure you would have done courses on analog and digital, right? So, digital is uh, use use of various technologies that come together, right? So, you're using, and one the start for digital was when things started to get you started to use computers, right? Before computers came, everything was manual, right? And then you had computers, right? So you had the binary state of 0 and 1, right? And from the computers, now we have evolved to supercomputer. Then we came to client server, and now we are talking about mobile devices, right? So you're using a lot more compute processing and storage to store information, because a lot of data has been generated. And how do you use the data, how do you leverage the data, and how do you take decisions based on the data? This is where you are using digital technologies, right? So we are living in an analog world, but using a lot of digital technology.
Yes, sir. The next question, what is the future of education post COVID-19 era for primary schools to higher education?
Yes, I think what's going to happen is that you're going to see this whole concept of blended learning, right? So, um, and when you talk about blended learning, just to handle situations like this, today you had COVID-19. Say 6 months later, if you have a situation where a cyclone hits you or any kind of a weather-related event, which prevents students from coming to the office, or sorry, to the school or to the college, um, uh, you can actually count on technology to help students or teachers, right? So, and I think we've already started to see so many uh, schools, college. It may not have been easy, but to be able to use the power of collaborative platforms like Zoom and others to be able to teach students. And I think this will continue going forward, especially the next 9 to 12 months till we have a vaccine. We're going to see this whole blended learning combination of people going to school, maybe in a staggered manner, plus the blended learning where you do certain things online, right? So blended learning is here to stay for the next, I would say, 12 to 18 months.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. The next question. May I know suitable architecture for cloud IoT networks? And what is the uncertainty in IoT?
See, uh, cloud architecture, see, today, uh, if you look at IoT solution, so you need an IoT hardware to connect to an asset, and you're generating data, right? So the asset is communicating attributes about itself which you want to send to a cloud platform, right? So you use the hardware for generating the data, and then you use the network to send that data. The data can come into a customer's own premise, or it can go to a cloud platform. So the enterprise has two choices. Most of them send data to a cloud platform because the cost of cloud is much lower, right? And the advantage of cloud being that you only pay based on the amount of compute and storage that you use. And that's why we're seeing a lot more cloud adoption happening, right? So most of the IoT use cases would be data being generated from physical assets and sent to a cloud platform where data gets stored, aggregated, analyzed, visualized, and then it gets integrated with the customer backend application, and where you get all your insights, and then based on the insights, you can actually take decisions. So that's on the IoT and cloud. What was the second part?
The second one is, what is the uncertainty in IoT?
So there are a lot of uncertainties in IoT, and that's why there's a need to build robust and redundant IoT solutions. Right from hardware, so you really need to build good quality hardware, because if they are, and if you need to have sensors which are calibrated very frequently, because sometimes the sensor doesn't give the right value. These are analog sensors, which is measuring a particular physical value, right? And so you need to make sure that your sensors are calibrated regularly, because if sensors don't report correct information, then your whole decision making process goes for a toss. Hardware needs to be really good quality. Network, right? So today in India, uh, we are not as good as some of the Western markets when it comes to speed of data connectivity, and also reliability, right? Um, so that is definitely a challenge, and that has to improve. Hopefully, the telecom providers will address this part by making sure that telecom networks are far more reliable than what it is today, and also the speed of the networks. So our cellular network, I don't think we get more than 10, 15 Mbps on our laptop, or sorry, on a phone. And in the home broadband connections, I think the speed definitely needs to go up, right? So a lot of effort on part of the operators to make sure that the infrastructure, telecom infrastructure, improves, so that we don't have any issues with the connectivity part, because that is the important part in IoT. If your network is not reliable, not secure, then you know your solution will never work. And finally, security, because you always have to be thinking ahead of all these hackers, right? So with so many devices connected to the internet, hackers are constantly trying to identify vulnerabilities in your endpoints, trying to find out where there is a issue where they can actually hack into and create havoc, right? So the need to constantly make sure that you have the right security practices followed, making sure your endpoints are protected, your network is secure, your applications and data are secure, so that you can prevent, any security hacks and all that. So you need to address all of that stuff from an IoT standpoint.
Thank you very much, sir. So, shall we take up a few more questions?
Sure, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. The next one. What are the impacts of COVID-19 on engineering aspirants?
See, those who have just finished come out of college, if you have already got an offer from companies, and if they're honored those offers, then I think it's good. I think many companies have also done virtual onboarding, right? So in fact, we also, of course, we don't take freshers, but we only take people with experience. But many have virtually onboarded people. So short to midterm, uh, there might be companies who may delay hiring, right? So if you're finished and waiting for the job, and if you've not have an offer, then there are companies who are who are postpone their hiring. So it might be 6 months later, 9 months later. But uh, there are also companies who have gone back on their offers, and that is very very unfortunate, which has happened. But I think there are enough companies who have stuck stuck to their offer. And I think I just advise you one thing, right? Irrespective of whether you have a job on hand or not, and while you wait for that job, I strongly urge you to make sure that you spend this time usefully doing courses, doing certifications, keep in touch with what's happening in the technology space or whatever area of interest, and wait till that time till you get that job. I think, right? So just be persistent, make sure that you keep learning, spend your time usefully till you get that job. But I just want to say that there is tremendous opportunity out there. There are a lot of problems in India that one can solve using power of technology. And even if someone is not wanting to take up a job and wants to start something on their own, I think there are enough opportunities. So that's what I would like to say here.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. The next question: our lifestyle has got changed during this COVID-19. Is there a possibility that this will keep existing? Like, will it continue as such?
Very difficult question to answer. I wish I had a crystal ball to see the future, but it's very tough to answer this. We really don't know. Who would have expected that a small virus, uh, which we can't even see, can create such havoc in the world. So, and there might be even a second wave. Maybe the winter is what they are saying. So we really don't know. It's very difficult. But all I can say is that irrespective of what kind of situation that we get, our need for us to adapt to that is very, very important, right? So today it's COVID-19. 1 year from now, it might be something else. So whatever it is, I think the need to adapt to that uncertainty. I think that is very important.
Yes, sir, definitely. One last question, sir. The Indian government is announcing more beneficial policies for the MNCs which are exiting from China. Will this increase the placements?
See, it will take a while for companies in India to replicate what China has built. China took 15 to 20 years to build that whole ecosystem, that infrastructure, people skills, and all that. So, so while there is a huge opportunity for India, but the amount of time it might take for us to build that will be long. So definitely an opportunity, but I would say anywhere between 5 to 10 years before we build an equivalent kind of infrastructure that China has built. But definitely there is an opportunity here with many of the MNCs wanting to have a China plus one strategy. They'll have China and have India also as an option, or many might even move from China to India. But that will take some time for companies to build.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much for taking up all the questions and answering them in a wonderful way, sir.
Welcome.
Yes, sir. Anything you would like to say to the participants as a final thing, sir?
No, I just want to say that I just urge you to just stay positive. I know there's a lot of negative vibes around, but just stay positive. You know, uh, just be happy with what you have. There are millions of people who've been affected because of the pandemic. Many people have lost their jobs. Many people have lost loved ones. People have been severely infected. And I think you and I have to be thankful to God that we are all safe, sound, have good food to eat, good homes where we can stay, and opportunities to learn, right, and to be with our loved ones. So I just want to end by saying, be positive, be happy, thank God for all His benefits, and I'm sure you'll do really well in the future, today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. That was wonderful.
Okay. Yeah.
We thank all the students, faculties, and industrialists from India, as well as we have participants from abroad, from countries like Singapore and Malaysia, for joining with us today. Hope you would have enjoyed the session well, and yes, all our questions have been answered by our speaker. I would also like to personally thank the coordinator of today's webinar, Dr. Beulah Jackson, Professor, Department of EC, for arranging such a wonderful and useful webinar for us. Thank you, ma'am. Announcement about our upcoming webinar. Our upcoming webinar is on game development hands-on training by Mr. R. Kabir, scheduled on June 11th from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. I request all the faculties and students to attend the webinars and get benefited. Meet you all in the next session of our webinar series. The feedback form link will be posted in the chat box soon. I request the participants to fill the feedback link with the correct mail ID. The link for feedback form and any certificate will be posted in the chat box and in our YouTube live streaming page. Please fill the form and receive your e-certificates through email. Kindly fill up filling the feedback form within 30 minutes after the session gets over. We would like to inform that the feedback link will not be shared through WhatsApp or through email. Thank you all for your participation. Stay safe. I request all the participants to fill up the feedback form with the correct mail IDs. This will not be shared through WhatsApp or through email. The link for feedback will be posted in the chat box and in our YouTube live streaming page alone.